There are several different parameters and actions that you can add to your dynamic block. That means that there may be more than one way to get your dynamic block to respond the way you want it to, and that's okay. Let's take a look at some of them and get an idea of how those other parameters and actions work. Just open up a blank file. I'm using the acad.dwt template. Most any template should be fine. Press Control 3 to get to my blocks here for my tool palettes. Let's go to the architectural tab and let's look at the trees. Now, trees, I'm inserting it here. This block is a very simple visibility state. So if I select it and right click, I can get to my block editor and it will edit that block. So in your visibility states, you'll see a lot of different things. And your visibility panel right here in your block editor ribbon tab gives you a lot of these different controls. If I click the visibility states button, it shows me each one of the visibility states options that I already have. I can select one, set current, and click OK, and that one will be current. Now, right now, I'm looking at all of the line work for the entire block, regardless of which visibility state it is. If they're not the current one, they're grayed out. And this dark line represents what's here in this current visibility state. A lot of times, this can be very difficult to work with. So you can toggle that off and on by right here through the BV mode command. If I click it, it only shows me the line work for this visibility state. Now, if I want to add or subtract objects to a visibility state, let's say I make something new here. I'm just going to draw on a rectangle kind of base in this case. Now, when I draw it here, it's in this visibility state because that's where I drew it. But if I go to these options here, this will toggle me through my different visibility states. So if I click to one of them, you can see my rectangle is not there. Let's say I want it to show up in this palm elevation. That's fine. I can come up to these two different buttons here. One is to make visible, one is to hide. So if I click the make visible, it again shows me all of my line work. Find the box here that I want, select it, press enter, and now it is also visible in this state. So you can see it's not visible in the others. If I want to remove something, I just do the same thing. I just click the other button, the BV hide command. Select that button to start the command, find the lines that I don't want to show, select it, press enter, and there we go. Now let's say I want to make a new visibility state. I can. I click on the visibility states, click new. I'm just going to call it tree. And I can tell it to hide all existing objects, show all existing objects, or just leave it the exact way it looks right now. I click OK. Now let's say I'm going to hide all these other lines. Press enter, and now this is what it looks like. And I can move this around, and there it is. If I go back to the palm elevation, you'll notice that these lines were changed because I moved them. So you got to be careful with that. That's the basic idea of a visibility state. It's pretty straightforward, and it's quite simple to work with. Discard these changes. I want to show you another one. Open up your tool palettes. Remember, you can press Control and 3, and let's go to the Civil tab. If you can't find your Civil tab, you may have to click on these little buttons all the way down here. They're not so much buttons, but they're little lines. It looks like multiple tabs stacked up on top of each other. Find the panel you want, in this case, Civil, and let's insert the Manhole Imperial. This is a very simple dynamic block. It's using the scale and the linear, the parameter and then the action, to just use the scale command on all of this. You say, well, why wouldn't you just use the scale command? Well, because this is very quick and very easy to do. And so this is just a simple example on how to apply more parameters and actions. So I'm going to select the block, click block editor, close that. And you can see here I have a parameter and it's called radius because you can name your parameters. So if I were to make a new one, if I were to recreate this, because I can select my parameters and my actions and I can erase them so that they're gone. All I have left here is my block. So what I want to use is the parameter. And I want to use the linear because what I'm doing is I'm changing the radius of this circle. So I click on this quadrant point here, and then I'm clicking on that center point. It's this distance. That's what I want to change. Now, if I select this here and I look for the name of it in my properties palette, I'm going to call it radius. I know what the parameter is. I go to actions. Now, in this case, I want to scale everything, but I'm scaling it, basing it off of this distance. So I click the scale command and I select the parameter. It's this guy here. Now I select the objects. So I pick everything, press enter, and there it is. It's that simple to set it up. Now it's going to scale everything. If I go to the test block, select my block, select on my grip, and it's scaling. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the parameter isn't where it was. So you may have to go back and forth and test things a little bit. So what you want to do then is change your selection. So if I go to my action, select it, right click, I can make some changes here. I can modify the selection set. So now I'm going to pick everything. That's going to scale this and hopefully it moves it with it. But since I started my parameter here and then went there, it's scaling it from this point to there. So you might have to move things around from time to time because order is important. So I'm going to select it, erase it. And another thing you can do is your parameter sets. And it has a lot of different things already set up for you, as you can see here. But it doesn't have everything. So there isn't a scale option in here. So you're going to have to go and set up your parameters. So start this again. I'm going to click the center with my center OSNAP and then the quadrant for this outside of that circle and click there. So now it starts here and it goes there. I go to actions, scale, select my parameter, and now I select my objects. Press enter and I go to test my block. And now it's scaling the way I want. So that's how you set up the scale. And I want to show you something else very quickly. It's a little bit more complicated. Let's go to the structural, and you may have to find it. Structural, and let's enter in the wide flange beam. This is pretty cool, beam, because when you first click on it, it looks like it's used visibility states, but it hasn't. So let's select it, right click and go to block editor. Now what it's used is the geometric and dimensional constraints. I turn on the show all, you can see all of these constraints. I'm going to hide these because they get in the way. Now what it does is that you set up specific dimensions. In this case, the depth, the flange width, the web width, here's the flange width, the radius here for the fillet, and your flange width right here and your depth of everything of the beam. Once it sets up these parameters, these aren't linear parameters, they're dimensional constraints. You can go to this block table, and each one of these states has set values for these different dimensions. So here is the depth, that's this guy right here. The TW, that's this guy right here, that's this dimension, and so on. And so I can come in and create a brand new one. I can call it whatever I want, and I can add values to it. Click OK, and that adds a new value for it. So this is a great design tool that you can use when you have a basic shape, only some of the dimensions may need to change. So you can program your dynamic block that way. You can take the time to draw out each one of these if you'd like to, or you can just enter in this tabular type of information. So there are a lot of different ways that you can create parameters, actions, and different constraints to create a dynamic block. Find one that works to get the job done for you, and it may be a lot of different combinations of a lot of different things.